Welcome to the chosen path. Let me ask you something. Who's worse, the person who throws the punch or the one who watches in silence and pretends nothing is happening? Chosen ones, the truth may sting a little. The most dangerous villain isn't always the one swinging their fists. Sometimes it's the coward who stands there, arms folded, while you suffer. Today we're diving into the real world of karma. Not the sugar-coated idea people like to joke about, but the raw, unfiltered reality. And trust me, karma hasn't forgotten the ones who stood by and did nothing while you were battling your storms. There's a special kind of betrayal in silence. When an enemy attacks you, at least you know who they are. Their intentions are out in the open, but when the so-called good people look you in the eye, see your pain, and then turn their heads, that betrayal cuts deeper than any insult. They had the chance to speak up, to step in, to simply acknowledge your struggle. But they chose to stay quiet. They told themselves they weren't part of the problem. But silence is never neutral. Their quiet didn't protect you. It protected the ones who hurt you. And isn't it ironic? The same people who ignored your suffering are now facing storms of their own. They wonder, why is everything in my life falling apart? They can't see the connection, but you and I know what's happening. Karma doesn't forget. Karma is patient, creative, and incredibly precise. The energy they put out, the choice to look away, to pretend they didn't see you. That same energy is circling back. The quiet witnesses, the ones who pretended not to notice, thought their silence kept them safe. They believed they were invisible, that by staying out of the way, they wouldn't be touched. But here's the truth: if you see someone being harmed and you do nothing, you've chosen a side. You're guilty, not because of what you said, but because of what you refused to say. And that guilt never disappears. Life has a way of collecting debts. Karma doesn't rush. It doesn't need a crowd or a stage to do its work. It moves quietly, invisibly, steadily. And when it strikes, it does so in ways they never expected. Broken relationships, stalled careers, restlessness that eats them from the inside out. They may not connect the dots, but the dots are there. Their silence has finally turned against them. Here's the part people don't like to hear: ignoring pain is not strength. It's weakness. It's the easiest escape, to turn your head and say, "It's not my problem." That's the coward's way out. True courage is uncomfortable. True strength risks personal peace for the sake of truth. But those who left you alone in your struggle weren't strong enough for that. They saved themselves at your expense, and now life is saving the bill for them. And you might never get a front row seat to watch it all unfold. You might not see them stumble. But believe me when I say, it's already happening. Karma doesn't need you to witness it. It doesn't need them to realize it. It only needs to balance the scales. Whether they understand or not doesn't matter. The energy has been returned to sender. The lesson is clear: silence isn't harmless. Silence isn't neutral. Silence is a choice, and every choice has consequences. The ones who betrayed you with their quiet are now learning that life doesn't overlook anyone. No matter how hidden they thought they were, fate was watching, and fate always remembers. Here's the truth that many people won't admit out loud. Doing nothing in the face of someone else's suffering is not courage. It's weakness. It's the cheapest, easiest escape. It may look safe on the outside, but in reality it exposes the very core of a person's character. Those who stood by when you were hurting weren't protecting peace. They were protecting themselves. They saw you being targeted. They saw the pain in your eyes, and still they chose silence because it made them more comfortable. Instead of risking a little of their own security to stand for what was right, they decided their comfort mattered more than your humanity. And what was the result? You faced the storm alone. You carried the weight, not because you deserved it, but because the people around you didn't have the strength to speak. Don't be fooled. They knew what was happening. They weren't blind. They weren't clueless. They simply looked away because pretending not to see was easier. That choice, that cowardice, is now what life is reflecting back to them. Karma doesn't only deal with bullies, it deals with the silent ones too. Those who thought that staying quiet would keep them safe are discovering the opposite. Their fear didn't protect them. It set the stage for their downfall. Some of them are watching their lives crumble piece by piece. Broken relationships, dead ends in their careers, an inner emptiness they can't explain. Others feel the weight all at once, like a tidal wave that knocks the air out of them. Whether it comes slowly or suddenly, the lesson is the same. Ignoring pain doesn't erase responsibility, it adds to it. When someone turns a blind eye to another person's suffering, they reveal their true nature. Neutrality is a myth. By refusing to act, they declare to the world and to themselves that their own comfort matters more than justice. They weren't just minding their own business, they were exposing the weakness of their own spirit. They may have seemed kind, harmless, or even good on the surface, but the moment pressure hit, they folded. They sacrificed truth for convenience, morality for comfort. That's what cowardice looks like. And karma doesn't tolerate it for long. The same fear that drove them into silence is now shaping their lives into something shallow and unstable. When you run from the truth, life eventually forces you to face it. All the excuses, all the stories they told themselves to justify doing nothing, those don't matter. What matters is that their inaction was a choice, and choices always have consequences. Now, the mask has slipped. Their flaws are surfacing, their character is being exposed for what it really is, and fate is making them confront the one thing they've been avoiding all along, themselves. But here's the part they never expected. While they were busy protecting themselves, you were busy surviving. You endured storms they could never have walked through. You carried burdens that would have broken them in seconds. They might have told themselves you were weak, fragile, or less than them, but the reality is this: they wouldn't have lasted a single day in your shoes. What you survived required a strength they don't possess. You stood when no one stood with you. You kept breathing when silence surrounded you. And that resilience, that unshakable spirit, is something they secretly recognized even if they never said it out loud. Deep down, they respected the strength they didn't have. It's almost ironic they looked down on you to protect their fragile egos, when the truth was that your endurance exposed their weakness. It's easy to criticize from the sidelines. It's easy to whisper judgments when you've never been inside the storm yourself. But the storm reveals the truth, and it revealed that you were far stronger than they ever imagined. People were relieved it was you and not them. They looked at your struggles, shook their heads, and silently thanked life that they weren't in your shoes. They thought, "That's not my problem," and moved on. But here's the twist. Now that life is finally giving them their own taste of hardship, they're crumbling under the pressure. The stress they once ignored in you is now eating them alive. For years they carried themselves like they were tough, like nothing could break them. Yet the smallest storm in their world is proving otherwise. Back then, they didn't care about your pain. They avoided your suffering because facing it meant admitting their own weakness. But secretly, they were impressed. They watched you keep moving, even when everything seemed stacked against you. They never had the courage to say it out loud, maybe not even to themselves, but deep down they knew you had something they didn't: resilience. And now, as life hands them their own battles, they finally see it. The strength they once dismissed is the very strength they're desperate to find. This is how karma works. It doesn't just get even. It holds up a mirror. It forces people to confront the parts of themselves they were too proud or too scared to face. And when they look into that mirror, they don't like what they see. Suddenly, the image of weakness isn't you anymore. It's them. It turns out you were always stronger. You were always tougher. And they were the ones who couldn't handle the heat. And let's talk about silence. Because this is where they got it completely wrong. They thought your quiet meant defeat. They believed their bullying had worked because you didn't clap back, you didn't fight, you didn't stoop to their level. In their minds, your silence was proof that you were weak. But they couldn't have been more mistaken. What they never understood is that silence can carry more power than the loudest words. You weren't quiet because you were afraid. You were quiet because you were wise. You knew something they didn't. Not every battle is worth your energy. Not every insult deserves a reply. Sometimes the strongest move you can make is to conserve your power and let time do the talking. While they were busy bragging about their fake victories, you were watching, learning, and growing. They thought you were cornered, but in reality, you were in control the entire time. They were too blinded by pride to see it. You weren't losing. You were choosing not to waste your energy, choosing to let life deal with them, choosing to rise above their games. And now, life has stepped in to finish what you never had to start. Karma has a way of waking people up. Those who once laughed at your silence are now learning what real power looks like. They thought you were playing checkers while they played chess. In reality, it was the opposite. You were 10 moves ahead. They only thought they'd beaten you because they couldn't see the bigger picture. And now that picture is becoming painfully clear. Your quiet wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Their arrogance blinded them. They assumed victory because you didn't fight back the way they expected. But here's what they missed. Sometimes the smartest strategy is patience. Sometimes the strongest statement is no reaction at all. Your silence wasn't empty. It was full of power. And now, every ounce of that misjudgment is returning to them. Their pride is costing them dearly. They are paying the price for underestimating you, for mistaking composure for fragility. And here's another truth people often miss: karma isn't just about punishment. It isn't only about evening the score or getting revenge. Real karma is deeper than that. It's about transformation. It's about awareness. Forgiveness is part of karma too. Not the soft kind that excuses behavior, but the kind that forces people to face themselves. When those cowards ignored your pain, they didn't just betray you. They betrayed themselves. They set in motion a chain of events that would expose their character and make them confront their own flaws. That's what karma does. It's not about you needing to see them fall. It's about them being forced to recognize the truth about who they really are. They might not like it. They might resist it. But karma doesn't ask for permission. It keeps balance, whether they understand it or not. The people who hurt you, the people who looked away, all of them eventually face the reflection they tried so hard to avoid. And when they finally do, they'll realize what you knew all along: silence is not weakness, and true strength can't be faked. Understand this clearly: karma's correction is not about punishment for the sake of revenge. It's about teaching, reshaping, and opening eyes that refuse to see. The world is built in a way where every action and every inaction sends ripples outward. Ignoring someone's pain doesn't shield you from those ripples. Eventually, they circle back, crashing into your own life. And when they do, the experience can feel humiliating for those who once thought they could dodge responsibility. At that point, life presents them with a choice. They can face themselves honestly, admit their cowardice, and grow. Or they can sink deeper into ignorance, blaming everyone but themselves. That's where the true power of karma lies, not in destruction, but in transformation. It forces us to reflect, to confront the impact of our actions, and to decide whether we'll evolve or repeat the same cycles. For those who once turned their backs on you, watching them now is almost poetic. Their silence in your storm gave them comfort then, but today it is a weight on their soul. The very thing they feared, judgment, discomfort, being on the outside, is exactly what they've attracted. Karma's circle is complete. And here's the bitter irony. They wanted so badly to be liked, to be accepted by the crowd, that they abandoned truth. They thought popularity was protection. They thought approval would keep them safe. But the weak, the ones who crave constant validation, are always the first to break. Why? Because when your worth depends on the opinions of others, it vanishes the moment those opinions change. They weren't clueless. They knew what they were doing. They saw your pain and decided, better them than me. They wanted to preserve their image, to avoid criticism, so they chose the easy way out: silence. But life has a way of balancing accounts. Those very people are now learning what it feels like to be ignored, dismissed, left alone. The crowd they worked so hard to please has turned its back on them, leaving them in the very loneliness they once left you to face. True strength was never about being liked. Real strength comes from standing firm in your truth, even when it makes you unpopular. The strong can walk alone if they have to. The weak cannot. The strong know their value doesn't shift with opinions. The weak crumble if they aren't constantly reassured. That's why the weak betray others so quickly. They're desperate to save themselves. But karma ensures that what you avoid, you eventually face. Now the lesson has come full circle. Their own lives are unraveling, piece by piece. The same way they turned a blind eye to your pain, others are now turning a blind eye to theirs. They thought ignoring you would keep their world intact, but in truth, it planted the seeds of their own downfall. Look at what's happening. Relationships they thought were solid are starting to crack. Friendships they leaned on are fading away. Support systems they trusted are collapsing. The perfect mask they once wore is slipping, and underneath it, their emptiness is showing. It's not happening because you wished it on them, it's happening because of the energy they created. By refusing to share in your burden, they've called loneliness into their own lives. This is the justice of energy. What you put into the world is what eventually returns to you. They tried to protect themselves by ignoring your storm. Now they are trapped in one of their own. And the weight of it feels heavier because deep down, they know why it's happening. Karma doesn't let anyone off the hook. It's patient, it's precise, and it's poetic. The pain they left you to carry alone is now theirs to feel. Not to punish, but to teach. And when it hits, it teaches in a way no words ever could. When you turn away from the pain of others, you weaken your own foundation. You can't expect to stand tall while ignoring the weight others are forced to carry. But that's exactly what these people thought they could do. They imagined that by staying quiet, by refusing to get involved, they were protecting themselves. What they didn't realize is that every choice builds a world around you. And now, they're trapped in the one they created. The very decisions they made. The silence, the indifference, the selfishness, have grown too heavy to bear. Their lives are unraveling because the universe never lets avoidance be a shield forever. What you ignore in others eventually echoes back in your own life. They told themselves your struggle wasn't theirs to carry, but now life is teaching them that their refusal to help only deepened their own wounds. It's the oldest truth in the book. What goes around comes around. The indifference they thought was harmless has come back as lessons disguised as chaos. Failed relationships, unexpected losses, storms they never thought they'd have to face. They are being forced to learn what they refused to learn the first time. That compassion and courage are never optional. And here's the part that stings the most: you were their test, and they failed it. Life constantly presents us with moral crossroads, moments that reveal who we really are. When they saw your pain, when they had a chance to step forward, to support you, or even just to acknowledge your suffering, that was their test. It was their opportunity to rise above fear and selfishness, but they didn't. They failed. They chose safety over integrity, silence over truth, and every choice has consequences. Their refusal to act set off a chain reaction that they can't escape now. The storms hitting their lives today are directly tied to the silence of yesterday. Every setback they face, the broken trust, the struggles at work, the loneliness, it all whispers the same reminder: you failed the test. Life doesn't forget. Karma doesn't let skipped lessons slide. If you don't learn it one way, it will come back again, louder and heavier, until you do. It's almost poetic how life works. They thought they escaped by looking away from your storm, but in reality, they only delayed their own. Now they're forced to sit in the very fire they refused to face alongside you. And this time, they can't escape. But here's where things get even more uncomfortable for them. While they were running from honesty, you were transforming. They see it now. You are no longer defined by the pain they ignored. You are no longer the wounded one they could look down on. You turned that pain into power, and you rose from the ashes stronger than they ever imagined. And that rise terrifies them. Because your strength highlights their weakness. Your victory makes their cowardice undeniable. They once thought silence kept them safe, but now your success has become the loudest reminder of how wrong they were. They can't laugh it off anymore. They can't pretend your struggle broke you, because here you are, thriving. Every step you take upward reminds them of the chance they had to stand with you. A chance they threw away. Instead of being part of your journey, instead of being remembered as someone who stood tall, they are left with nothing but regret. And regret is a heavy chain. They envy your growth, but what they really fear is the reflection it casts on them. Your rise forces them to confront their own choices. They didn't just miss the opportunity to support you. They missed the opportunity to prove their own strength. Watching you soar is like watching the life they could have lived if they had chosen courage instead of cowardice. Now, their fear runs deeper than your success. It's the fear of knowing they chose the easy road, and that road led them nowhere. It's the shame of realizing they helped shape the very power that now shines without them. They became a part of your story, not as allies, but as proof of what happens when fear wins. So yes, they're afraid of your rise. Not just because you made it, but because your success is the mirror that shows them who they really are. Now that they can see your success, they can no longer escape the truth of their own shortcomings. Every achievement you reach is like a mirror held up to them, reminding them of the choices they made or didn't make. And it burns. It's not just uncomfortable, it's unbearable. They can't silence that inner voice whispering, "You were weak. You failed when it mattered, and your weakness is what made them strong. That story will follow them for the rest of their lives. They can't rewrite it. They can't erase it. While you continue to rise, their guilt becomes the shadow that trails behind them, a constant reminder that when they had a chance to show courage, they chose comfort. This is where karma shows its true genius. People expect it to come loud and dramatic. Lightning bolts, instant payback, disasters you can point at. But the most painful kind of karma is quiet. It's subtle. It works from the inside out. For those who ignored your pain, the punishment isn't always an obvious downfall. Instead, it's the invisible weight they carry. Guilt that eats at their spirit. Regret that steals their sleep, and shame that won't let them breathe freely. Every time they hear your name, every time they see your success, every time someone praises you, that heavy stone presses harder against their hearts. They can smile in public. They can laugh with friends. They can even put on the mask of happiness. But deep inside, they know the truth. They failed the test. They chose self-preservation over compassion. They abandoned honesty in exchange for comfort. And no matter how they try to hide it, the guilt keeps clawing its way back. That's the cruelest kind of fate. Not a punishment that ends, but a sentence that lingers, a self-made prison with no escape. They may try to drown it out with noise, distractions, or shallow connections. But nothing silences the voice of conscience once it's awakened. The more they run, the heavier it gets. Over time, it reshapes how they see themselves, how they interact with the world, and how others see them. The very weakness they tried to hide becomes the defining feature of their lives. Meanwhile, your story unfolds differently. You rise. You keep building. You keep turning pain into power and setbacks into stepping stones. Their weakness didn't stop you. In fact, it fueled you. The people who once left you to suffer now watch in disbelief as you thrive. Their fear isn't just of your success, it's of what your success reveals about them. That their cowardice only magnifies your strength. And that fear deepens into regret. Because while you were transforming your pain into growth, they were shrinking from their chance to grow. They could have been part of your journey. They could have stood with you. They could have been remembered as allies. But they chose silence. And that silence now screams in their own hearts. This is the real punishment of karma, not just broken friendships or failing jobs, but the knowledge that they betrayed their own souls. It's the shame of knowing they abandoned someone in need, and the regret of seeing that person rise higher than they ever imagined. But here's the part that matters most for you. Your rise isn't about them. It was never about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. The best revenge was never to see them fall. It was to keep climbing no matter what, to succeed in spite of the odds, to shine in spite of the shadows. Your victory is your voice, and it speaks louder than any revenge ever could. Every step you take upward is a lesson to the world that pain can be transformed, that strength can be born from struggle, and that chosen ones don't stay broken. Your story isn't just a win for you. It's a light for others still trapped in the dark. It tells them, if I can make it through, so can you. So remember this. The most powerful response to betrayal isn't bitterness, it's growth. The greatest comeback isn't vengeance, it's success. And the true strength isn't just surviving pain, but turning it into a force that changes lives. You are that force now. Your light is proof that no betrayal, no silence, no cowardice from others could dim what was placed inside you. You're not just rising, you're inspiring. And that is something no one can ever take away. If this journey we just took together landed for you, if something here opened up inside you, nudged you, or finally made sense, Come deeper with us. Hit subscribe and join our community. This isn't a passive channel, it's a small, fierce space where people who refuse to settle meet, learn, and grow. When you subscribe, you'll get more than videos. You'll get real talks, honest tools, and a place that holds you when the road gets hard. Being part of this group means you won't walk this path alone. We trade stories that change how we think, share steps that actually work, and call each other back to courage when doubt shows up. Your presence matters, your voice, your lessons, your wins. If you leave a comment, I'll read it, and we'll start conversations that go beyond the screen. Tell us what hit you most, what you're dealing with, or a single victory you want help claiming next. Don't miss what's coming next. I've got a follow-up that goes deeper than what we covered today. In the next video, I'll reveal the quiet habits that protect your energy. The first 3 signs someone is secretly draining you, and the exact mindset shift that turns pain into power. That's the practical side of the message. The part that makes your rise inevitable, not just possible. So join us. Subscribe, tap the bell so you don't miss the next lesson, and show up in the comments. Bring your questions, bring your story, and bring your courage. We're building something real here. And your next step starts in the next video. See you there.